Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today we're having our final book club discussion on the Beartown series, and we're talking about The Winners by Fredrik Backman. Since this is a book club discussion video and it's also the third book in the series, I'm assuming you have read the series already or that you don't mind spoilers, but just as a fair warning, there will be some spoilers in this video, and yeah, that's up to you to decide what to do next. I will have a shorter spoiler-free review of this book in my January wrap-up video, so if you don't want to watch this whole discussion, you can go and check that out instead. For this discussion, I've had some questions from Chelsea at Libraries and Lattes and from Mimi at It's Mimi Duong. So thank you so much to you for asking the questions, and those are the ones that I will be discussing in this video. I'm also going to put all of the questions in the description box, so if you want to share your answers in the comments, or if you want to make a video of your own answering all the questions, you can find them there. What did you think about the addition of the Hed characters, Johnny and Hannah and their family? Did you like having them thrown into the mix? Yes, I liked it. I liked having their perspective. I thought their dynamic as a family was interesting, and that they as characters, mostly Hannah and Johnny, were interesting characters. And I also liked having the perspective from Hed in general, and just seeing how they were the same as the Beartown people. They were just as good, and they were just as complicated, and they were also just as hateful toward the other town as the people in Beartown are toward them. I don't feel like I'm on Beartown's side in any of this, so it didn't feel like going across to the enemy side. I just thought it was a piece of the puzzle that was kind of needed to get the complete picture of all of this. It was also interesting to have the player from Hed playing on the Beartown team, and just seeing that crossover and how people were handling that, because there's always going to be that when there are two towns that are so close to each other. People are living in one town and working in the other town and so on. So yeah, I thought that was a very interesting addition. I had to look up that character's name in English, because in Swedish his nickname is Käften, which is sort of slang for mouth. It's a word that you would use if you were going to say shut your mouth to someone, but you could also just use that word, like Käften, to say shut up to someone. So that as a nickname has a little bit more bite to it, no pun intended, than Mumble, which is a very cute nickname. And I don't know if that had any effect on how the character himself was viewed, because the Swedish nickname could be considered a little bit mean to someone who doesn't speak a lot. Mumble felt a lot more, just kind. I don't know, I feel like that could have an impact on how you are connecting with the character, if you feel bad for him, or if you feel like he is kindly treated or not, or I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Question number 2. Having read the whole series now, which friendships or relationships are your favorite? Would your answer to this question have been different after reading the first or second book? I don't really think in terms of favorites, but it's an interesting question to think about, because there are relationships that I enjoyed more, I guess, or that I connected more with, or thought were beautifully portrayed. So I guess those are my favorites. In The Winners, I really liked the relationship between Benji and Anna and Maya. It felt like Benji became kind of a big brother to them, and they were all very protective of each other. And it felt like a very honest relationship where they all knew their flaws and their hardships and the things that they had struggled with and the mistakes that they had made, and they just sort of take each other for who they are, and accept each other and respect each other and look out for each other. So yeah, I thought that was a beautiful friendship to evolve. And I guess that started in Us Against You with the island and all of that, but I feel like it had blossomed a lot more in this third book, and so yeah, that was really nice to see. I also liked the relationship between Bobo and Tess for the same reason, I think. It seemed like they saw each other for who the other person was, and they respected each other and supported each other and protected each other, and they just stood by each other very fiercely. I also like the relationship between Hannah and Anna and Mira, who's called Kira or Kira in English. I liked how they could find common ground and put their children first and just sort of recognize each other as mothers, and they didn't really have an issue. They were just from the different towns, and yeah, I just liked that they could see past that and just like, if you want to support my kid, you're my friend kind of thing. In the previous books, I liked the friendship between Amat and Bobo. Bobo is just a character that grew a lot, I feel like. And I also like the relationship between Benji and Kevin. I wouldn't say I liked it because it was positive, but just like how it was portrayed and how they were so close before the rape, and after Kevin committed the rape, their friendship changed and sort of ended. But Benji still had that like love-hate relationship toward Kevin and being so angry with him, but also being angry with himself and hating himself for still loving Kevin. And I thought that was really well done in the book. I can understand how it would be very difficult for Benji to just let all of that go and just erase that from his childhood and like teenage years, and like that was a huge part of his life and a very close relationship and a person who he loved a lot. So yeah, it would have been very strange if he didn't still have some kind of love for him even after all that happened. It also said a lot about Benji, both as a character in the book and like his character as a person, to leave that relationship in the past, even though he had so much love for Kevin previously and still, and yeah, just how he made that choice and left that behind, I think said a lot about him. In the series as a whole, I've loved the relationship between Maya and Anna, and yeah, I don't think I have to explain that anymore than that. And so yeah, I think it has changed from book to book because the things that have happened in book 2 and 3 hadn't happened yet, and like the relationships have evolved over time. So in the first book I wouldn't have said Amat and Bobo or Bobo and Tess, or like there were so many relationships that didn't exist or like we didn't know about them. And I also think that their ages play a part in that, like them being teenagers and like early 20s. A lot can happen in those years, and people evolve and friendships sort of shift and people get together and break up, and you know, there's a lot of things happening in that sort of age span. There's also Sune and Alicia, and there's Mira and Peter, and there are just so many relationships and dynamics in between all the different characters. So yeah, most of them were great, but I guess those were my favorites. What were your thoughts on Alicia's role in the story or town? Did you feel like we got enough of her story, or did you want more? I feel like Alicia was a bit of a symbolic character in this story. It said that the whole story was about her, and she's the bear and everything, and yet we don't really get to know her that well, and she is a young child, so that also makes sense to me. I feel like she was kind of a symbol for all the children who have a rough time at home and need a place for safety and community and comfort and joy, and who can find that in sports, and also like all girls in sports and how they are sort of to the side. And the series as a whole also sort of shows like how her story connects to the way that Maya and Ruth and Benji and Amat are treated. Like when all the focus is on winning and players like Kevin, there are a lot of other kids who go unnoticed and their needs aren't met, and they suffer the consequences for that mentality. I feel like it's a lot more common to hear about how the pressure of sports impacts the stars of the sport, and like how that pressure can be unhealthy for a young person, and it definitely can be, and like there's a lot of truth in that. But I think the series also shows that the impact can be a lot wider than that specific person, and in this case that pressure sort of exploded onto everybody else. And so in that context, I feel like it makes sense that we're not seeing Alicia so much, because she is not the center of attention, and she hasn't sort of found her spotlight yet. But this whole story is sort of like about making way for kids like her, but we're still not seeing that much of her because all of the attention is on the other stuff. Backman uses a lot of foreshadowing in these books, and especially with Benji's storyline. Even though we kind of knew early on what would happen, did that affect your emotional response any differently than if you hadn't known anything? I'm not really sure. I've only experienced this book with the foreshadowing, so it's hard to know how it would have been without it. I don't like spoilers, and I don't like knowing too much about what's going to happen. So in that sense, it would have been more of a like emotional impact for me, I think, if I hadn't had that foreshadowing. But at the same time, the foreshadowing also is what creates a lot of the tension and suspense in the books. So without that, I don't think the reading experience would be as intense as it is. So I'm not sure if it would have been better, but I think maybe the emotional impact would have been stronger without the foreshadowing. I'm not really sure. The hints are very vague, so I feel like we still don't know exactly what's going to happen, and we also don't know to whom, or like who is going to be affected by a certain tragedy of some kind. So yeah, I think they're very vague, and so I think that's fine. I also think that my reading experience was impacted by other things, and so I didn't have like a super strong emotional reaction to this third book, which I know a lot of other people have. And like I did have teary-eyed moments, and like there were a lot of things that sort of pulled at my heartstrings, but I wasn't like crying my eyes out at the end. And like there were a lot of scenes that I felt like should have, or like would have had a bigger impact on me at other times. But I feel like now, because I read it so close together, there was a lot of Backman these last few months, and like this last book was so long, and I think I felt a bit of pressure for like the deadline and like getting through the book. And so I think that also made the emotional impact less for me, because I just had the sense of like, I need to finish this book and I need to get through it, and I need to like, I don't have time to stop and be emotional right now. We just have to move forward. I read it more like as an assignment almost to get done and get through, rather than like taking my time with it and just enjoying it and sitting with it and like really being immersed in the story. So I'm not sure that was the foreshadowing's fault. I think it was just too much of it all for me at once, and so I was kind of numb. Like I didn't have more care to give almost. I was all cared out. What did you think about the parallel between what happened to Matteo and Ruth versus Leo and Maya? I think it was very realistic, and I appreciated it being shown. I think it was a good way to keep our attention on that issue, because I think that without the storyline of Ruth and Matteo in this book, we would kind of lose interest in what happened to Maya, which is incredibly sad as well, but I think that's realistic too. It's obviously also very sad and infuriating. It's very sad that they were both raped. It's sad that Maya was being blamed as the victim, and that Ruth was ignored and not believed even by her parents. I think it's very easy to start comparing the two girls and their experiences and their backgrounds and their circumstances and all of that, and to sort of discuss which girl had it worse. And I'm not sure that's helpful. Both girls were raped, and they were very poorly treated by people afterward, and they both suffered in different ways. They both had brothers who were very protective of them, and who both felt like they had failed at that, like protecting them, and who were very angry and who were also affected by the rape. The biggest difference is the parents and their reaction to what their daughter told them. Maya had parents who believed her as soon as they found out, and showed her love and support and stood by her and fought for her. And Ruth's parents did not do any of that. They denied her experience altogether and called her a liar, basically. They added to the damage that was done instead of like offering help of any kind. I feel like that's a message to parents, but also to like people in general, because not everyone is going to have parents who want or are able to fight for their children in that situation for whatever reason. And it would be very easy to blame religion in this case. But I feel like the mother in the family had mental health issues of her own. The father, I'm not really sure what his problem was. He just seemed like a very weak man to me. But yeah, anyways, I guess those are my thoughts. I think that both Leo and Matteo could have gone very similar ways, and it's just, yeah, a lot of circumstance and luck and someone seeing them at the right moment and like snapping them out of it and like showing them a different way to deal with a situation. Like that's the only thing that makes a difference, and it makes a lot of difference. There would have been a lot of lives saved if Ruth was believed in the first place. What was your opinion on the dynamics between the friendship and what happened afterwards? I'm not exactly sure what this question refers to, and I asked for some clarification, but I didn't get any. So, Mimi, please feel free to explain yourself in the comments. I feel like there could be a few different options here, but I'm guessing that you're referring to the friendship between Mumble and Rodri. I can't remember all of the details, but Rodri was a pretty horrible guy, just in general to Ruth, but also to Mumble. I think he just saw Mumble as someone he could push around and control and have sort of as an audience to his own ego, and someone who wouldn't speak up against him because he didn't speak much at all. It was a very toxic friendship and a lot of like power imbalance. And yeah, I didn't like any of it. I can kind of understand Mumble's dilemma afterward and like Rodri threatening him with things. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of sympathy for him. I feel like he could have communicated something to someone about what happened, like just write an anonymous letter to the police. I don't know, like do something. And like he could have also just opened the door when it happened. He didn't have to stand there to keep watch. He could just go and grab some other people and show them what happened. I don't know. I just feel like there were other things that he could have done, and maybe he would have been lonely or like without a friend. But I think that nobody needs a friend like Rodri. Like it didn't get him a lot afterward anyways. So I don't know. I felt bad for him, I guess, as a person, but like I don't have a lot of sympathy for him either based on his actions or lack thereof. The story ends with a conclusion of many of the beloved characters we've followed. How realistic was Backman's portrayal of what could happen? I feel like it's a bit rosy. There are a lot of stars coming out of this little town, which isn't impossible, but I feel like there was some extra sparkle and shine added to some of them. So maybe it's not completely realistic, but I didn't really mind that. I'm happy for all of the ones who made it in life or like achieved their dreams. And I also feel like maybe they fought for that, and like maybe they had already seen a lot of loss and grief and hardship and love and strength, and sort of knowing that they could get through things, and maybe they just weren't afraid to try. Maybe they just went for their dreams and didn't really have a lot to lose, or like were willing to risk that because they wanted to make something out of their lives. And I also think that the ones who made it had a lot of support and had people around them who saw something in them and who encouraged that and supported them in different ways. And I think that if you have that, then you can do anything. Those were all of the questions. Thank you again to Chelsea and Mimi for asking them. I also had two other like tiny comments that I don't know where to put if not in this video. The first one is about the chapters, because As far as I can remember, in the first book there were no like chapter titles, and in the second book there were like really long titles and sometimes like a whole quote or like a sentence from the chapter. And in this book there were like one word titles. I definitely preferred the one word titles to the longer ones, but I think I prefer not having any titles on the chapters at all. I think I knew that beforehand, but this was just a very like clear example because it's the same series and the same, author and story and all of that. And so there were very good circumstances for an experiment like that and seeing which one I prefer. And so I think I prefer no titles. And if there are titles, then one word is enough. Okay. And the other thing that I don't think I've mentioned anywhere else, at least, is this like repetition of the bang bang. I don't know how it's said in English. In Swedish it's bank bank. From like the hockey pucks hitting things, but also for different things, like for a heartbeat or for, I don't know, there were different things that made that noise, and like whenever it could be used, it was just like sprinkled in little bank bank. I just really like those kinds of intentional repetitions. I'm very sensitive to repetition when it's not done intentionally or like when it's not done well, but I feel like it worked very well in this series. I thought that was a really nice touch. So like I talked about in my reading goals video, I'm going to put the book club on pause for the foreseeable future. I just want to say thank you again to everyone who has participated in any way, read a book or participated in the comments or just watched the videos or shared about the book club in any way. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I've had a lot of fun with this book club. So yeah, I'm not going to ramble on about that anymore, but yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.